a great day.
All right, so we go straight into the first meat of the matter, Nkoli, and we're still talking about the silent conquest.
Yes, indeed, silent
Absolutely.
conquest. Of course, that's a report on the solid mineral sector, which was carried out by some groups of civil society. So we will be looking at what details, what the findings are, how did they arrive at some of the issues they raised in that report, and what recommendations do they have for the government. We have joining us Philip Jakpo, who is the Executive Director of the Renewable Development Initiative, RDI, also happens to be a co-author of that report, The Silent Conquest. Philip, thank you so much for joining us on the
It's
program.
good to have you.
It's good to be here. Good morning.
All right.
All right, so, I mean, since you're the co-author, maybe this is also a safe time to ask you why the title of this report is Silent Conquest in the first place. Who is conquering what and how?
Well, I think we arrived at that title, Silent Conquest, as a compromise, um, so that we don't raise too much alarm. The title will actually have been the Chinese invasion of Nigeria. Silent Conquest because it will seem while we were sleeping, while we were chasing other dreams, uh, our solid mineral sector, or why we were so much focused on oil and gas, our solid mineral sector has suddenly been captured and conquered, um, not by interests that are concerned about our country, but interests that are all about, taking these things out of the country and, leaving communities empty-handed. So it's a report that is actually calling on the government to pay a lot of attention on what is happening in the solid mineral sector so that it does not become like the um, oil and gas sector or the situation we have in the Niger Delta.
So how widespread is this infiltration? And that's by, in a way, asking, how did you arrive at this? You are talking about specifically Chinese nationals. Are you saying it's only Chinese nationals that are seen in this solid mineral belt? Are there other nationals? And how did you come about this report?
Well, I think it is good to establish the fact that you have a lot of legitimate Chinese interest in Nigeria. So it's not that we are just targeting the Chinese. But the information we have in our report is information gleaned from public source materials, desktop work, our work in the field. And we suddenly come to the realization that between 2018 and 2025, all the arrests that we have been having, that the EFCC has been making actually in the solid mineral sector, if you have 10 arrests, 9 you have Chinese involved. It's coming at a time. This is funny that Nigerians are talking about America attacking Nigeria or attacking terrorist locations, and we have not just realized that the real invasion has taken place, and that invasion is our solid mineral sector. It's a disaster in the making for local communities because the crisis in the Niger Delta is about multinational companies coming in, extracting, and revenues are made for the country but does not benefit the local communities. But in the solid mineral sector, it's different. So you have a lot of individual players who have some form of backing of state actors, obviously, because no individual or no company can come into a community and start extracting without some form of backing from people in authority. And then we realize that they are everywhere. It's not only in the northern part of the country because we have a lot of reports about what is happening in places like Zamfara. The crisis in Zamfara has a lot to do with mining. It didn't start today. We see what's happening in Nasarawa and other parts of the north. But it's not only there. If you go to Cross River, you have the Chinese, they're also there. They are not only mining, they're also logging. So it's also another form of extraction. You go to Anambra, they are there. You go to Kwara, they are there. You go to Benue, they are there. You go to Ogun State, they are there. So that's why we call the report silent conquest. We were sleeping and the sector has been taken over.
All right, let's look at regulation. One would be asking, are these operations mostly illegal, or are Nigerian institutions issuing licenses that enable this exploitation? And again, when you talk about how they cut away these resources, I mean, is it possible that there may be clauses that are very vague when it comes to regulation?
Well, I think the Minerals Act, which is being reviewed, will address some of the gaps in, um, our laws, uh, which of course is weighed against communities. For instance, most of the agreements that you have, some of these mining firms make with local communities do not have legal backing. So that's why you go to these communities to see even where extraction is taking place, no responsibility to the environment, no responsibility to the people. But the new Minerals Mining Act, which will replace the 2007 Act, actually addresses some of these challenges. There are mandatory environmental and social impact assessments. The CDA, which is Community Development Agreements, will now have legal backing. So these things were not there before, and it is assumed that these are the loopholes that these mining firms noticed, and they started, operating the way they are operating today. Now, I also want to draw something in, and it's very, very important. And there's also a link between terrorism and the solid minerals extraction. And I'm sure most of us were not surprised when the northern governors recently said they have banned mining, which is a sweeping statement, because we must ask, have you banned mining generally, or are you planning to ban mining generally, or you want to ban illegal mining, which is something which is already illegal, it's banned already. So it makes us to think there's something happening in the sector that we have to ask questions. If you have these nationals from other countries and even Nigerian collaborators operating in that space, they cannot go into any community without some form of official backing. So this is something Nigerians have to pay attention to. So when the northern governors say they have banned mining, people should ask, why are you banning mining? Are you banning mining generally, or you are banning what is already banned? So it's a question for them to answer. So what is happening in that sector? Where some things allowed that have now become a monster, or are there things we don't know? So we should ask questions.
And we are asking questions here, Philip. So who is now failing Nigerians more here? Is it the foreign miners or the government officials or agencies who are supposed actually to regulate the sector and,
Oh,
carry
of
out
course.
oversight?
You don't need to go too far. I think it is government failing the people, because these foreign nationals who come in and their local collaborators are just there to make money. They are not interested in the environment. They are not interested in the social impacts or environmental impacts of what they are doing in host communities. It is the government. And of course, we have had cases where you have security agencies fighting among themselves to protect. I think sometime this year, if I'm not mistaken, it was last year, we had a case of a Chinese illegal miner who was about being arrested by the NSCDC. And you had some security agencies fighting to protect that person. So something is happening. When the House of Reps organized a hearing recently on the solid mineral sector, a lot of companies did not even turn up for that hearing, even though they were summoned. A lot of companies did not. So it's a case of to hell. Whatever you do doesn't matter. We have backing from somewhere, from some people who are highly placed. That is the meaning. Without them saying it, that is the meaning. A lot of them did not turn up. So it's a call to action to reclaim what is our own. Like I said earlier on, we have a lot of legitimate Chinese interests. The Nasarawa state government did something last year, this year. I think they signed some agreements with some Chinese firms to come into the country, mine, and do some level of processing here before it's exported, so that you have a local value addition employ people. Okay, things like that are acceptable. But then you have a lot of them who come into the country as tourists. By the time their visas expire, they do not go back to their country. They just disappear into the host communities where you have solid minerals. And it will seem they have something that our government does not have, because it will seem they have somehow geological information about where you have one mineral or the other. And even a lot of communities don't even know what they have in their own community. So these are the kind of things.
Is this based on your findings, or is it a speculation that they probably know what our government do not know, and that when their visas expire, they find their way into the community? This is a very big issue, really. Are you saying immigration officers do not do due diligence as regards the people that are coming into the country?
It is a call to action by the Nigerian Immigration Service to ensure that a lot, because they are not even today, started I think in 2003 or 4, there were some arrests that were made, and I think it was the former Minister of Solid Minerals in charge then, and the information was that a lot of these Chinese people who were arrested at that point did not have valid, their visas had expired and they refused to leave the country. So who is supposed to monitor them? It's the Nigerian Immigration Service. So when they are coming into the country and you give them 6 months visa, you give them 1 year visa and it has expired, why are they not being repatriated back to their country like Nigerians are being, like it's being done to Nigerians? So it's a failure somewhere, and the NIS should take responsibility for the issue of Chinese nationals, and indeed nationals from elsewhere who come into the country and their visas expire and they are still in the country. A lot of the Chinese people were arrested. Most of them, their visas had expired. So there's a gap there.
All right. So I remember that the Chinese ambassador to Nigeria, Yu Dunhai, sometime in August, while he paid a courtesy call to the Ogun State capital, said that he has warned thoroughly Chinese nationals from, embarking on illegal mining. And if anybody is caught, should be dealt thoroughly with. And so I'm sure that at the diplomatic level, when you're talking about resource diplomacy, there's some sort of engagement. But when it comes to boots on ground and real-time issues, I hear what the silent conquest is trying to deal with. Now, talking about punitive measures, Mr. Philip, what do you think should be done in the area? You talked about policy, you talked about the act being reviewed. Currently, I think it's just about minimum of 2 years as substantial fines to those who are caught, illegally mining without, mining licenses. Isn't it, like a pat on the back? I mean, someone goes decades mining and exploiting these precious stones out of Nigeria, making billions of dollars out of it, and is caught and is said to 2 years. Go and sing no more. That's almost like what somebody, expressed it to be. Isn't that also perhaps an enabling factor for these people?
Well, there's no doubt about it. You have used the right word. It's a pat on the back. And going back to the Chinese diplomatic presence and whatever might have been said, well, it is good to say something and then match it with action. So there should be adequate collaboration between the Nigerian authorities and the Chinese to ensure that even before coming into the country, these individuals, some of whom I remember there was a case of some arrests that were made, I think in Plateau State, if I'm not mistaken. Those companies that company was registered as an agro commodities company, but they were mining lithium. They were mining lithium, and lithium seems to be the focus these days because of it's a transition mineral used for electric batteries and electric vehicles. So they know everywhere there's lithium in the country, and as our people jackbar, like we will say, and the communities empty, you have these foreign nationals coming to those places and digging these things. So we have said it explicitly, illegal mining is economic sabotage and should be treated that way. But then we need a lot of work on the part of the Nigerian Immigration Service to ensure that they do a lot of scrutiny of individuals coming into the country, especially those who want to be involved in mining, to monitor and see what they are doing in these communities. If they are registered companies, and if they are registered, are they doing what they are supposed to be doing? We must commend one agency of government which has done very, very well in the arrests. And like I said earlier on, the information we have in our report is in plain sight. It's not a report we sat down somewhere to conjure. Every information, and the information has to do with a lot of the arrests that have happened since 2018 till date. And the EFCC has been up and doing in making these arrests. So other agencies of government that are relevant must work collaboratively to ensure that this menace, is nipped in the bud. It seems if you arrest one today, you arrest two tomorrow, 10. So something is happening that we need to really pay attention to.
Now, did your report also delve into what happens after the arrest? What has happened to those who have been arrested before?
Well, we restricted ourselves to putting the bare facts in the public. Between 2018 and today, these people have been arrested. Well, whether, like you mentioned earlier, whether it's a pat on the back, we don't know. But our report, was just to put the bare facts in the public.
Okay, so what does this mean? I hear you talk about economic sabotage, really, for Nigeria if illegal mining is allowed to continue. What does this mean for Nigeria economically, particularly when it's in terms of revenue that should accrue to the country and opportunities, future opportunities in the solid mineral sector? We hear about even transition minerals at this time as well.
So Nigeria is a country that is so focused on oil and gas dependency. But experts have told us that the solid mineral sector, where you have about 40 solid minerals scattered across about 500 locations in the country, can generate over $700 billion to the economy. So when the government is talking about diversification, that is a sector that will contribute largely to our GDP. But unfortunately, like the report captured, and it was also captured by the NATI audit of the solid mineral sector, which covered the period between 2007 and 2023. There's a lot of leakage in that sector. The government needs to do a lot if it really wants to diversify from oil and gas and earn revenue from elsewhere. There's leakage in the solid mineral sector. But the biggest issue is not only the leakage, but the fact that we are already having resistance in some of these communities. So we're going to create another Niger Delta where, people know that beneath their soil, there's life-changing opportunity. And they see foreigners, and they see people who have nothing to add to the community, and people who don't give anything to the community come and cut these things away. So it is the social dislocation they face, the economic disadvantage at that level that will finally trigger, the kind of things we have in the Niger Delta where oil has become a cost. So that is what we are saying. If we want to lift our people from poverty, the solid mineral sector, is a pathway. Just like oil and gas was supposed to be. Unfortunately, it's not. I'm from the Niger Delta, and I can say that oil has not been a blessing to many of the natives of the Niger Delta. So we are now trying to replicate that with the solid mineral sector, except, the government listens to this wake-up call.
All right, I hear one of your wake-up calls. So perhaps you can tell us more. What are the 3 top urgent actions governments must take? Because earlier I heard you talk about, the conspiracy between these multinationals, Chinese nationals, and even the elites. What is the first thing to do considering all of this?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, illegal mining should be a first-line item when it comes to economic sabotage. That is very, very important. We also want the government to expedite action on the Minerals Act to ensure that, recommendations, for instance, that will give local people some sense of ownership of their resources is put in place. The government has, I think the proposal for the New Minerals Mining Act talks about a mandatory community development agreement. I think that is good. So in that case, no company goes into any community without signing this mandatory agreement, which also talks about benefits. There's also the need for enhanced social and environmental standards, with emphasis, of course, on environmental and social impact assessment before the mining leases are even given to those companies. The benefit sharing, which is also very, very important, the new Mining Act proposes, I think, about 5% derivative to local communities, which we say is not enough. The government should go at least to 10% and then start pushing it up from there. So if these things are done and we make sure that the sector is well regularized, there's local people involved, and then agencies like the EFCC, the NSCDC collaborate very, very well, and there's no undue interference from other security agencies that might want to protect these so-called VIPs. I think we will be on the path to salvation. You must remember, I think 2 weeks ago, one of our senators mentioned something. Their police escorts, their retinue of police escorts have been withdrawn. So they say they observe that the retinue of security guarding the Chinese are still with them. So these are some of the things we need to actually question. So we need to get it right as a country so that we don't create another resource cost with solid minerals.
Okay, just before we let you go, beyond derivatives and all of that accruing to host communities, and even the revenue that will be generated or is being generated from the solid mineral sector, one of the critical issue is the damage, this mining does to the environment, particularly after the mining is done and the miners have moved away. The people tend to live with these craters, that are created. What does your report say about that as well, in terms of looking at the health and environment of the people, particularly host communities?
So the good thing is that the New Minerals Mining Act also covers what you have just mentioned. For companies that have extracted in different communities, before they leave, they must ensure that they restore the environment back to what they met. So I think that's a very, very good recommendation in the proposed Minerals Act, which replaces the 2007 version. But in the communities we have visited, that is what you have just mentioned is what we have seen. It is ongoing, and in places where the mining has ended, the environment in most of these places have not been remediated. So you see, it's there in Jos. I have seen it. In Enugu is there. In different parts of the country is there. So the new Minerals Mining Act has propositions on how those companies must ensure that they restore the environment back to what it was before they started operations. And these things will fulfill in their legal and other implications.
Silent conquest.
Okay, your message to policymakers now, because I'm just wondering that if this report, if the government chooses to ignore this report, what next?
Well, we will continue shouting. We will not stop talking. Someone told me some days ago that you guys have been talking for nearly 20 years and little has changed. So why are you still talking? I will say, well, you have just mentioned something. We have been talking for a long time and little has changed. If we had not talked, nothing will change. So we'll continue talking. We will not stop.
All right, thank you so much for that. And I hope that the advocacy just doesn't stop here, that the federal government will definitely look into this report and activate ways of concerning it. Thank you.
Hope so.
All right. We also do hope that, some Chinese nationals or even the